Welcome back to the Head, Heart, and Boots podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Brandon. Join us as we wrestle with what it takes to transform ourselves and the businesses we lead.
Oh, what'd you think?
I don't know, it's kind of serious.
Should we laugh?
All right, man. Hey, we're really excited to have you on the show. We know that, man, you are just jamming at full tilt right now with all the training events that you guys are planning and putting on. So thanks for taking the time to hang out with us, Tom. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. Where do you want to kick off?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the thing is like when we first started kind of being introduced to you and talking to you a little bit about your backstory, for me, I get a kick out of the fact of where you started in terms of your career in this industry, because you're part of this group that essentially in a lot of ways has established what we do today, especially in that commercial large loss environment. And so I just wanted to give people a chance, if there's a few listening that don't know, where it kind of started for you, how you got into this industry, and just kind of give us some perspective on what this looked like, back in the day, kind of as we began to develop what today is this disaster restoration industry.
Well, for me, it started, I graduated from high school in 1983. And in 1984, I started doing asbestos abatement in the summertime. And that's how I paid for college, because it paid well. It was back in the 80s, and we were making $20 an hour, and
Wow.
and so I'd make enough money to pay for school and take the rest of the year off. Now the work sucked. It wasn't fun at all, but we were young and we didn't know any different, and we were just loving the money, and that was really what got us by. And I did actually for 3 years, and every summer, and I always was very good at project management. And the guys that I was working with over that time period, they said, hey, there's this company down in Phoenix, you need to come and talk to them. And they're starting up their own remediation company and all this stuff. And they just so happen to also be part of a restoration company. So you had a choice between the remediation and the restoration. And I was like, I had no idea what the restoration side was all about. And so, but I was always really good at project management. So I took the job with them. And so I left school. I never ended up finishing college. I left in my junior year, and next it went right to hit the ground. Next thing I knew, I was in Dallas, Texas, and working on a job there for remediation. And then the remediation company wasn't doing so well. And I was like, okay, I just made the worst decision of my life here, because I just left college and went with these guys. But then they came to me and said, well, we have this restoration side of our business that we'd like to get into. And this was 1986, 85, 86 now. And so I was like, what's this fire damage, water damage, restoration stuff? I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And so again, then I ended up on a job in Dallas, Texas again. And this time with a Kim sponge in my hand, and it was a fire job in this little factory, mom and pop factory. And I was scrubbing the walls with a Kim sponge, and once again questioning my choices.
What have I done?
Yeah, what do we? All right. So I was going to college for accounting, and now I'm like, I've got a Kim sponge in my hand, and so that's kind of how I got into it. And then, luckily, the company that I was with was like one of 4 companies that did work from coast to coast at that time. And one of 4, very few companies were doing large loss and large commercial losses. And so we flew all over the world. We were not only all over the country, but we were in Singapore. We did some stuff in Kuwait. We've been, Costa Rica. There was just a lot of different places that we went early on, because there wasn't anybody doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's really how it all got started for me. It was really by accident. But again, I kind of fell in love with the industry. You know, for whatever reason, you know, the catastrophe, the travel, the long hours, you know, the terrible diets, you know, all that stuff didn't seem to bother me all that much, you know, because we were doing a lot of work in New York City. And one of the biggest projects where I cut my teeth was in Jacksonville, Florida, right after I started with the company. And we were there for 3 months on a power plant. And, you know, the money was good. We were young, you know, and we didn't know any better. And we were just having a lot of fun. You know, we were lucky. We had condos on the beach, you know, and in St. Augustine, and just, you know, it was just everything just seemed to click. And now there are some places that I've been to that that I care not to go back to, but for the most part, I've loved every city that we've been into over the last 35 years, and we've been in places that people normally, the general public, never gets to see, you know, because there was a disaster. And that's one of the exciting things. It's never the same. You know, you can even you go to the same facility 3 times and 3 different types of losses. So it's always changing and always different. I was never a suit and tie guy, you know, with ambitions for the corner office. I know this is how I go to work every day. This is my office now. So it's like,
I love it. I was just thinking to myself, okay, accounting degree to running around the world chasing storms and large cat events. It's like, wow, what a switch. Is there part of you goes like, thank goodness I didn't stay on that track on the accounting side?
Oh yeah, there's been a couple of little crossroads in my life that I've made decisions to go forward with with what we're doing, and I always think back, wonder what would have happened if I would have, you know, stayed in that or this. And, you know, the one thing that I've always done, though, no matter where I am, is I always put 110% of myself into it, and sometimes a little bit too much. And so bringing large loss mastery to life, you know, I work on it all the time. It's a 7-day a week. It's a passion for me. I don't have a time clock on it. And so I love what I'm doing. And so there isn't a paycheck, so to speak. That,
you know, it's funny that you say that. I was thinking about something that a lot of business owners, I think, feel challenged by with their employee base or whatever. And it's just sometimes this lack of vision on the individual, like just that ability to kind of see, okay, here's the situation right now in front of me. However, there's all this other opportunity. There's these things that I could see coming, you know, to fruition or coming together if I stay here, if I continue to participate. In my mind, of course, I'm making some jumps here, but it sounds like you're the kind of individual that carries with you some sense of adventure and vision, though, so that when you're in a current situation, you're kind of seeing what could be or what's next. Is that accurate?
I think we all have to be asking ourselves, am I doing enough? Can I do more? What else can I do? How can I improve myself so that I'm a better person, that I'm a better teacher, a better husband, better boyfriend, whatever. All of those things, I think we always have to be challenging ourselves. And I think in our business, if we have passion in our business, I think our businesses are much more successful. Because when you passion, you can't learn that. You can't get that in a college degree. It has to come from within. And that's, you know, it's one thing to open up a business, but it's another thing to really, really love doing what you're doing. And because it drives you, when you get that passion, you'll have more ideas, more things, and people will look at you and say, but man, how do you do that? How do you stay ahead of the competition? You stay ahead of the competition by not worrying about the competition, but just fixing yourself and making sure that you are doing everything that you can.
Can I ask you a question about that? I love that. Has there been seasons in your life where you felt like you were lacking passion or found yourself in a situation or a context that you weren't fired up. And how did you process through that?
Oh yeah, there were some times where, it was just like, man, what am I doing? And later on in my career, it's like 10 years in, 12 years in, it's like, okay, all right, what are we doing? And then you have that. So it's, it's kind of like age, like when you turn 30, you have one set of trends in your thoughts. And you turn 40, you have another set. You turn 50, you have a whole nother. And when you get to in your 40s and then in your 50s, it's like, okay, where are we at? So in the 40s, I was kind of, all right, so I missed a couple milestones that I set early on in life, which were unrealistic to begin with, but goals nonetheless. And so you always recalibrating. It's like, when I started Large Loss Mastery 6 years ago, almost now. And when I started that, it was purely just on what's next, and purely just a passionate move about leaving something behind, about giving back to an industry that's given me so much and taken me around the world. And so now I get to teach a lot of the best practices that we set back in the 80s when nobody was, we didn't have IRCRC or anybody back then. Back then, IRCRC was where you got your carpet cleaning certificate, and restoration was still down the road a ways, as far as training and all of that. We were making up the rules back in the early 80s. And so that all of that information now is what I plug into Large Loss Mastery. And that's what attendees get. They get everything. They get 110% from me and 110% of me. And so they get everything that I ever learned, or everything that I ever seen that worked or didn't work. And so we plug in all of those best practices that are now just part of the concrete of the industry.
I want to touch base on that, probably defer it for just a couple minutes, but there is something unique about the training that you're doing, and just this real emphasis on live and interaction with the group. And of course, there's more to that. So we're going to get into that soon, in terms of just kind of the nuts and bolts of what you do and why you do it the way that you do, because it's pretty epic. But before we go there, just before we leave the past here a little bit, can you think of, like, kind of top of mind, an example or a story where you guys were kind of making something up on the fly that eventually became something that you consistently deployed? I'm just thinking, man, the size and scope of jobs that you've been a part of, there's got to be some cool story in there somewhere.
Well, I'll give you one that I can think of. There were several, but when we first, after I started with Munters, and we were the only drying company in the industry to speak of. And we were trying, for distribution of air, we were trying to find ways, because we just had a lot of flex duct, and in the early 80s, 83 was the first time that a desiccant dehumidifier had ever been used on a drying job. And when I joined Munters in 94, was about the same time that we started to find, okay, what we needed some type of ducting. And lay flat, we were working with a company that was making these long tubes for bags. So they're making plastic bags. And so the plastic material, would be a tube, and it would come in, miles of it, and then they would cut it and seal it, and and now it's a plastic bag. Okay, so yeah. a big 6 mil bag for like abatement work. Well, we were doing one of the factories, and somewhere I can't even remember now, but we're doing one of the factories, and we were looking at it and going, look at that. And so we said, can we have one of these rolls? And we took one of the rolls, and it was a little bigger than what we needed. might have actually been a little smaller, but we looked at it, and then we looked at the duct, the supply on our desiccant dehumidifier, and we were looking at it going, okay. And then we looked at the flex duct, and we said, can you make it this size? And they said, sure. And so that's where lay flat
Get out of here
for us came from.
Like, so
Dude.
I'm just thinking how much of a staple that is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are the bare bones things that everybody's ordering? And lay flat, oh my gosh, it's like a bedrock item that we use. So that literally came out of that. It was trash bags pre-finish.
Yep.
That's awesome. I love
very,
that kind of
very
stuff.
few people actually know that story, and it wasn't until you asked me that question, it was like, I was like, oh, because there's several of them, but lay flat was probably the best one. And that was early, I would say 1996, maybe. Let me go back a little further than that. I think it was 90. I think it was around 94, 90, 93, 94, somewhere in that.
Gosh, that is amazing, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Old days for sure.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Hey, before we transition to history, I mean, before we transition to some of the current day stuff, so we chatted about this just a little bit before the podcast, but I think let's talk emotional, spiritual, physical health. You know, our industry, and you've been in it longer than either of us. Our industry is really known for, and really the greater home services construction field, right, is known for chaotic hours, and it's a stressful, industry. There's it's difficult on families. It's not known for how we prize health, like self-care and taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think for somebody who's been in the industry so long and traveled so much and experienced so many different cat events, how have you learned to care for yourself? Because I mean, you're by all appearances a fit guy. You have tons of energy. You're continuing to build things late into your career. You've already been at this 30 some years. What does that journey look like? Because you talked about back in the day, you were just running and gunning. Probably the 80s version of Monster energy drinks and cigarettes and fast food, right? Like how did you make that transition over time, and what compelled that? Like what does your journey look like in terms of caring for yourself and emotional, family, all that kind of stuff?
It's very important, and just on a side note, we didn't have Red Bull or anything back in the 80s. I don't know. It was all big gulps and stuff.
Yeah.
From 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important, and I tell people, when they're, I used to be I was in the franchise business for a little while. I was doing a large loss for one of the franchise companies here, and for a couple of years before I broke out onto my own. And I was always used to with the people that were coming in, there'd be all shapes and sizes and all ages, and you'd see the ones that were late 50s and early 60s, and they were getting ready to buy a franchise for a restoration company. And the one question I would have for them is, do you know this is a young man's game? Do you know what is expected of you to succeed? If you don't have the money to hire muscle, you are the muscle. And so you really have to make sure you're making the right decision first. Second, once you're in it, is it a passion? Do you care about it to the point to where it's part of your life? And it has to be a driving force in your life. It has to be part, because it's where you're going to spend half of your life is working. It has to be something good. So if the long hours and the big gulps and the Big Macs, because you're going to have those moments where that's all you have. If that's not what you want, then this isn't for you. And there's some people that it's not for, but for the people that are out there that they're passionate about this business. They love this business. And they're in a good relationship, but it is tough. It is hard on relationships. I mean, I say that as a person that's been engaged twice. And so I was married to the road. And so for about 10 years of my career, I was on the road for 260 days a year.
Wow.
And for 10 years. And so I had millions of Marriott points and Holiday Inn points and Delta points. I used to give away, 250, 300,000 Delta miles, for gifts, for friends and family. But it cost me, it cost me relationships, that travel and all of that. It is very difficult. It's very difficult. And I would be lying to you if I said, what I'm doing now with Large Loss Mastery, where I work 7 days a week, my girlfriend Donna would tell you that it's true. And, my first love is the logo, and because it has to be that way. And then everybody else, is in there. We're all family, but it's first and foremost. But it is difficult, and keeping yourself in shape. You have to be disciplined. One of my favorite videos that we plug into Large Loss Mastery is Navy SEAL commencement speech, where he says, if you want to change the world, start by making your bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's discipline. And so if you're disciplined on making sure that you're paying attention to the people around you and not just the business, that you're not just following your passion, but you're also bringing everybody along with you so they feel like they're part of the ride. That's the most important thing, is being able to be disciplined with it, to where you're not running the streets with the boys at night. You're taking care of business, taking care of your body, get up early, get in the little gym. Every hotel now has at least something, you can at least get on the treadmill or do so, there's a million ways that you can keep yourself, but it's your body. If you don't keep your body and your mind, because it all starts here.
Yeah.
If it's not here, then it's in the rest of it. The rest of it doesn't matter. And so it's just, because it's not the systems that fail. It's when our heads aren't in the right place.
The answer is interesting, Thomas, because you kind of make the assumption like he's really going to dial into how important it is to prioritize XYZ, and but you didn't. And this is not a bad thing. It's an interesting perspective. Is for you, the first piece, the priority for you is this business, is the thing that you're creating, whether it be a restoration team or whether it be obviously what you're doing now with Large Loss Mastery. So I appreciate that. I appreciate it, because there are many of us, sometimes I feel like I'm in this category, but not always, where just because of our natural wiring, if we're not engaged in something that feels like we're lifting, creating, building a mission, we aren't happy. And so I think we can oversimplify some of the things that we're talking about in terms of, well, everything's balanced. It's all about, making sure that you prioritize all the facets of your life. And I think I think we need to have understanding of the different facets of our life, the different things that influence us or that we hold important. But I think it's also okay for us to understand there's going to be certain people, the way they're wired and the things that they're chasing, that is never going to be second to anything else. And as long as we're diligent about communicating that and building relationships that can thrive in that kind of prioritization, you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an okay summary of kind of where you went with that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, and that's just from my perspective. Mm-hmm. And, from my perspective, it's, you have to have people that are helping you row the boat. Mm-hmm. You have to have people that have your back, when you don't have your A game. And you have to have that. You can't do anything by yourself.
Yeah.
And, with large loss mastery, it's a little bit different because I'm at that tip of the spear, because I don't have a book or anything explaining how to do it. We're buying a franchise or something. There's a whole support system.
Yeah.
I am the support system. And so I have to surround myself with people who know more, who are better in certain areas, and then have my downtime with my girlfriend, and where we can escape on little vacations, or go down to our favorite restaurant or whatever it is. And so when you're in a situation where you're creating something that has never been done before, it's really a challenge, because you have to not only challenge yourself and constantly ask yourself, what am I not seeing? I know what I know, but what am I not seeing here? What more can I do? And what am I not doing it enough of? And what am I doing too much of?
Yeah.
And when you're creating something that there isn't a blueprint for, that's challenging, but it's also really exciting.
Yeah.
Because when it starts to click and you start to see it working, it's unbelievable. The energy that you get out of that. And I've just been blessed, to have been very fortunate to have worked with amazing people all through my life, and they wore off on me. And so now I'm trying to wear off on other people.
Yeah. My gut says you've been doing that most of your career, man. I know that what little time we've spent with you wrap all your experience in a ton of humility. So I think that I'm glad you're on the mission that you're on right now, because I think a lot of people are getting a ton of benefit from your experience and the way that you carry yourself in that perspective. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What I know. You're
Well, before we move
something.
on, you bring up disciplines as having been an important thing for you to develop over the years. What are some of the disciplines that are really important to you at this stage of your life?
At this stage of my life, the most important discipline for me is health. And it, once you go past 50, all bets are off. I mean, things might have been fine last week, and then it's like right now, I was at the doctor this week, and it was like, it's like, all right, so I hurt. Well, I don't know. We don't know why you hurt. All right, but I hurt. Now this hurts. Now that hurts, and so I think that's probably the number one thing. Is when you're in your 30s and 40s, make sure you're watching out for the 50s. Your knees, your shoulders, all those things. You're gonna miss them when they don't work like they used to. It just is. And so that's probably the biggest discipline now, is health. And especially with my schedule this year, it's like, dang, I'm having to train like Rocky just to make sure I can, get through this first half of the year.
Yeah.
And but that's the biggest thing, is making sure you're healthy, because if you're not healthy, you're not any good to really anybody, including yourself, starting with yourself.
Man, we just recorded an episode, and now I'm getting a little bit more courageous that I want to let it be, let it go out into the open world. Is it kind of based on what you're saying? It's like Chris and I just had a bit of a epiphany's a really neat word, but we just kind of came to this realization of how important some of the things that we've done to shift a focus onto our health, in terms of it being kind of foundational for being able to build the company, be able to serve people the way that we are. And I've been hesitant to let that show go out, because it felt a little condemning and a little bit like we're trying to guilt people or condemn what they're doing. And that's not the point. It really is like what you're hammering on is that's kind of the foundation of the system. Like, you can't keep asking to produce when something doesn't have fuel, right? Or it doesn't have, its functionality.
Yeah, the equipment's not working,
Yeah.
And what does that, I mean, can we dig in? What does that mean to you, that fitness or taking care of yourself? Like, what, practically speaking, like, how do you fit that in? I mean, you have a really intense schedule, even though you're not operating in the field like you used to. You are very busy traveling all over and teaching and so forth. So what does it look like for you to be disciplined about your health?
Well, when I got about 3 years ago, I downsized, and so I had a house that it required a lot of work. I landscaped it. It was awesome, and outdoor movie screens and pools and tiki bars and all that kind of stuff. But I'm very passionate about that too. So I was always working on it. And so I decided I was going to sell and downsize. And so I downsized into, I've got a condo now. It's right on the river, and it's really cool. And I can watch rockets go out that window over there, but they don't actually go out that window, but I can watch them launch over there at Kennedy Space Center. But luckily, there's a little gym down here, and there's lots of area to walk and run and all that. And they've got a little gym downstairs, and this is why one of the number one reasons why I chose here is because it's got a little Marcy machine, it's got a couple of treadmills, and so it's got some weights and stuff. And when I'm working, I just I get up in the morning, I put on my gym clothes, and I work. And then when I get a break, I just go down to the gym and do my hour a day. And it's a religion. If I don't do it, I'm actually upset with myself. It's like, man, because I live in Cocoa Beach, and in Cocoa Beach, it's very laid back, and you can get in a real laid back mode and drink too many beers around here at night, and then it's counterproductive. And so I try to keep the beers to the weekend if I can. So
yeah,
I can appreciate that.
Right on.
And just eating, and it's just so important, and the older you get, the more challenging it is, and the harder it is to keep weight off, the more disciplined you have to be to really pull it off. And again, going back, if I could go back and tell myself some things in my 30s and 40s, I would slow it down a little bit. But I wouldn't change anything. Didn't want to do anything like that.
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't be where you're at if maybe you had listened to yourself, right? There's that kind of dichotomy, if you will, of the two things, it feels like.
Yeah.
So are you guys cool if we switch into a little nuts and bolts here?
Let's do it. Yeah.
So we've obviously seen you in the industry for quite some time. You said 5-6 years now, right? That large loss mastery kind of first came to fruition. Mm-hmm. And just loosely, here's some of the things that we see. One is super interactive, live primary, and in a real I'm going to let you go into it, but you've done something really unique in the setting of the training. So just start there. Give us an overview of what large loss mastery is and what's different about that training platform compared to what most of us have seen in other elements, I guess, on this more technical side of training.
Well, what I did with large loss mastery was I was on a project up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, kind of where all of it was born, and I was working with a franchise in Oshkosh, and he had never put together a contract or a scope of work for a contract, that big. And it wasn't that big. It was I think it was a $300,000 or $400,000 job, which was really big for him. And I was up there, and I went up and put together the contract, the scope, and the number, and asked, I said, all right, we got to ask the adjuster for upfront money, because we're going to ask for 20. We always ask for money up front. If you don't ask, you don't get. And so he was like, can we do that? And I was like, yeah, if you don't ask, you don't get. And so walking them through all of that. And then the adjuster, who had been in the business for about 25 years, said he'd never seen a time and materials contract with a budget number. And I was just like, okay, well, really? I was like, that's what this industry was born on, was time and materials and a budget number. And so I started to realize, and he brought in a consultant to look at my stuff, and because he couldn't, to me, that was just boggled my mind because it wasn't that big of a job. It's a small little factory, almost like the factory where I started back in the 80s with that Kim sponge. It's almost exactly the same. And so I started to realize that the gap in the industry was growing. It was expanding between the consulting insurance and the insured side and the end user and the restoration companies. And it wasn't necessarily a gap. The gap was really just because of inexperience and lack of knowledge about the basics, about the fundamentals, about the best practices of the industry. And no one was teaching that. And so what I did was I got together with Mickey Lee and Brad Key, who are good friends of mine and just brilliant guys. And Brad has been in the industry for, 40 years.
Wow.
And he's one of the founding fathers of commercial restoration as it is today. And got with them and took a skeleton of an idea and sat down and wrote and rewrote and restructured and created a program called Large Loss Mastery. And it had all the best practices from damage assessment to scope writing to critical path management to managing changes, managing variances, invoicing, audit triggers, all of those things. And so, because no one was touching on those things. There was lots of technical courses on how to dry, but there weren't a lot of programs that were designed on how do you manage, how do you do the job so that you're profitable? How do you estimate it so that you're correct and you're competitive? And how do you do a damage assessment? That's the foundation of the project. And so all of those things weren't being taught anywhere. And so I put them into the first manual. I think I have three now. I have three different manuals now with a new one coming soon with a technician, the next tech. We're going to add a next tech course, which will be the next level technician, but that'll come later this year. But it was in that will be based on the same principles, not the technician motion of how to dry and how to remove carpet or how to clean a wall, but more on how to manage people, how to manage the client, how to manage a problem, working through, critical thinking, managing the critical path, all of those things that we need the guys to be doing over and above, just pulling equipment and moving equipment and taking readings. We want the next level of everyone. And so that's where I want the journey that I try to take everybody on is this is where you need to be thinking, because everybody gets in this box and they just think like this. My job is to remove the blinders so that they'll see everything and not miss anything and always look around and ask yourself, what if, how much and how long? What if that something happened? How much would it cost and how long would it take? And if we're always asking ourselves those questions and plugging in the best practices of what we already know, you're ready to go. So when that call comes for that big job, you're ready. Because that's my job, is to have you ready for when that moment happens, whether that moment is today, or that moment is this year or next year or 5 years from now. That's our job, is to have you ready for when that moment happens.
I love it. Talk to us a little bit about this setting, because I think the setting for what you do is really a major differentiator from other types of training or learning systems that I've at least seen. Walk us through that a little bit. And what does somebody experience when they come to an event specifically done by you?
The experience, well, number one, in kind of in everything that we do, we have to enjoy the moment, enjoy where you are, enjoy what you're doing, enjoy the moment. If you're not enjoying the moment, then do something else. And so that's the first thing that I always tell everybody, and that I want to convey to them when we do a class. Say, for example, when we're here at Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral up here, and we're always like at a little resort, and to where everybody is in one place so they can network, they can communicate, they can meet new friends, new allies, new strategic partners, that coming through the class. And so I like having that atmosphere to where everybody's in one place, and we have dinners together, we go to the class together, and then we plug in a case study that we break into teams, and usually teams of 3 or 4. And the case study will always be a fire, water, and in this last couple of years, we added in COVID. And we're there at the resort. So the resort is part of the case study. So there'll be fire and water damage at the resort. And then we tie in a field trip to Kennedy Space Center, and we'll have a fire and water scenario at the Saturn V building, or at the Atlantis building, or other buildings that are on campus out there. And so we get to go on a field trip, but I want them to look at it not through the eyes of a tourist, but through the eyes of what if, how much, and how long. And the atmosphere and everything is a built-in distraction, because I also want them to be nervous and distracted and look around and say, oh my God, how do we do this? Where do we start? But by the end of the class, the proposals that are turned in are second to none. And we've taken them in just a short, in an 8-hour period, they've put together a $3 or $4 million project. And some of the guys that have done that have never even done, $100,000 project. Yeah. And so it's all in our minds on what we, the limits that we put on ourselves. Yeah. And one of the things that I pride myself with the class is we remove those limits, and we take the blinders off, because we want them to see everything. In some in the industry, they want the blinders on. Because they don't want restorers to make mistakes. We want them to do exactly this. We want them to use this tool, this. But my theory is, if you're trying to keep these guys doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, you're not helping them grow. You're not helping them really at all if you're just afraid to let them make mistakes. Yeah. Because guess where all of the biggest things and all of the most successful things that come into this world are based on mistakes that we made, or things that didn't work the first time. Yeah. And so removing the blinders is the biggest thing for me, and getting people outside of their box, and then making them feel really comfortable with doing something. And I have to remind them at the end of the class, look around and look at what you just did. Look at the proposal that you just put in. I would take their proposals and put them up against any real project that may come up. And so it's really exciting to see the light bulbs come on, and for them to see exactly what they're capable of. I love that. And that's the biggest jolt for me is like, man, look at these guys, and I have to grab myself and look around the room and say, wow, look at this. This is happening. This is real. And so it drives me to no end to be better.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I just wanted to affirm kind of what you said of taking the blinders off and addressing those limiting beliefs, right? Like I could imagine there's some restorers out there that are new to the game, or they're new to the large loss scenarios or cat work, and they're intimidated. They're like, I don't know if I have what it takes to do a $4 million loss. We encounter this sometimes with our clients, who are looking to grow and get to the next level in their business. And there's just this kind of fear of, I don't know if we're ready. I don't know if I've got the experience or whatever to jump into that area of the business. But so Brandon and I, we had a Zoom chat with you, a handful of weeks ago, and you walked us through the Edge Plus software.
Mhm.
Now, for somebody that I've not been in the estimating side, I mean, I've only had cursory exposure to it because I've primarily been on the branding, marketing, sales stuff. But even as a newcomer to that conversation, I felt a great sense of understanding and confidence. Actually, I'm like, oh, so this is how it's done. like I haven't been involved in a lot of those large loss estimating environments, and so even just listening to you and the way that you broke down the Edge Plus software and kind of walked us through a case study scenario, I'm like, oh yeah, this is so doable. Like this is very accessible.
Mhm.
I think for somebody who hasn't even spent a lot of time on the estimating side of the business. So I just want to affirm that. I can only imagine what that case study exercise is like in terms of accelerating people's skill.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's amazing. It's amazing.
It's one of the things I was thinking about too is just the real differentiator. And this is so common. It's like we all buy the same gear, right? Now that you guys invented lay flat, we're all using it, right? Right. All the things. But there's this reality that, like, in my limited experience, we had the opportunity to work with some larger brands and watch some very competent large loss project managers execute on larger projects. And it is less about, and I'm not downplaying the requirement of technical competency, but in addition to that, I guess, and is there is a real key element to the way that we manage the experience is what prevents us from getting in a lot of trouble. And two things that you talked about stood out to me. One is getting some money up front. I don't know why in this industry we are so shy to ask for funds to do our job. But it is what it is. So that, you have not because you ask not. I love that.
Mhm.
But then it's this prep. It's what does the org chart look like? Who's doing what? What is the combination of leadership to labor force? Like, and that's really what we haven't even tipped into this, but your software is
Mhm.
really designed to help us get a grip on that. And that inevitably helps us save face and liability in terms of consultants and billing and all the things post event. Do you want to just touch on the Edge
Mhm.
software a little bit before we close our time together?
Absolutely. And I'm a keep it simple, stupid guy. And all my life, I like to create things that make my life easier. And when I was in my project manager days, back in the early 90s, when the first laptops came out, it was amazing because you could actually create a critical path. You could create these things for the job. And so I always had, all of these things in my head. And in the late 90s, I had an idea for an estimating tool where I could put together an estimate on everything, whether it would be documents, document recovery, or structure, or, high tech, which would be your electronics and all of that. And then it just kind of sat on a legal pad for a long time until I started up Large Loss Mastery, and it was like, okay, I started to see where it all started to fit in. And then a buddy of mine, Brad Key, who has just taken in an enormous amount of data, created a production rate calculator, and which is now part of the Edge Plus. And then out of that, we grew the rest of the Edge Plus. So it's all based on historical data. And when you use it, you'll see that it's typically we're within 10%, either a little bit higher, a little bit lower than any project that you've bid in the past. And so that's always a challenge that we always give to everybody. It's like, take it, plug in your projects that you did in the past. It took a couple of days for you to estimate, and you'll see that now you can do what used to take a couple of days or even a day. You can do it in 45 minutes or an hour, as long as you have the right data. You have all the damage assessment done and everything. And that's what's really cool about it is it works and it's accurate. Now, there are some people that going back to people, some people in the industry, they want to keep everybody in that box. The edge is outside of that box. And it literally, the name says it as it is. I want to take people to the edge. I want them to be on the edge of where they can get with projects and estimating. I don't want them in a box. I want them, on the edge of the industry. And so there are people that are like, no, Tom, we don't want guys, we want to be using the same, all this. I don't, and I just don't apply to that. It's like, I don't want everybody thinking the same. Everybody doesn't think the same, and everybody should be outside of the box and utilizing all the tools that are out there, because this is an amazing tool. And the guys that are using it, on the most consistent basis, are extremely happy. And they are the guys that drive the next version. Every month we come up with a new update. And so it's one thing about software, it's in constant evolution. It's never complete. Yeah. And I'm never satisfied with it, or am I ever satisfied with myself. I'm always demanding more out of myself on a daily basis. And the same with the software. It's never complete. And I was having a conversation with some clients on Monday, and we were talking about, what they were wanting to see, and what I was telling was coming, in the future. And it's just really exciting, especially when they use it. And I get that call, and I'll be like, man, this software is amazing. And I wish I would have had it when in the 90s and 2000s, who knows, where we'd be at right now.
Yeah, I think it's powerful. We of course are just starting to get kind of a grip on it and learn more about how it's deployed. But I think it's just that for people listening, that, just to be clear, it's not a product pitch. It's more from the perspective of making the transition to commercial can be very intimidating. Mm-hmm. And we've got to take action to help prevent some of that, or remove some of that intimidation, so that people can be passionate about it, and they can bring, it's like we have this saying with the technicians, like making it easier to do the right thing than the wrong thing. Like, anything that we can do to equip someone, or any tool someone can use where it makes it easier for them to, as you say, be creative and think out of the box, it's got to require some confidence, right? You don't freestyle with an instrument until you have enough confidence about the basics, right? That you're not thinking about it anymore. And I think in a lot of ways, this software is a tool to help people get there. Like, they don't have to be so caught up on the concern of, do I have it? Do I have enough experience? Whatever. They can leverage a tool like this that's got years and years, multiple decades of experience for them. So again, I want to be clear. We're not big product pushers. And so I don't want people to get the wrong idea, but this is something that will give you more confidence to make this transition into commercial. Yeah. And your training does the same thing.
And a way to look at it too is all the training that's out there, we're always focused on sizing equipment, so we're always looking at the CFM, or pints per, gallons per day. That's all production rate, and that's all production rate of equipment. But nowhere is anybody teaching the production rate of people, and how to size your crew, and because that's what all this is about. And so, do you have too many people on the job? Do you have too few? And so that is the other besides the estimating part of it is the production rate calculation that tells you exactly how many people you need to do the job, supervisors and production people. And so it's very exciting. I get everybody should be using it.
I think again, coming at it from the sales customer experience, kind of the soft side of the business, I think what I appreciated is a lot of times the cost of mitigation restoration projects is just this black box to our customers. Even our commercial customers that have higher loss propensity, more experience with these kind of damage events and so forth. The whole billing and invoicing and cost of the projects has always been this black box because of Xactimate, and it's so robust and complicated and everything else. As I went through that case study with you, when you did that for Brandon and I thought to myself, this really makes the process a lot more plain. I mean, it really breaks it down to the fundamentals. It was so easy to understand where the costs were coming from. And I thought to myself, well, shoot, I go back to when I'm in the field doing commercial business development and, going into customer segments like multi-site hotel groups and stuff like that, to be able to sit down with an operations leader pre-loss and to be able to take them through a loss scenario and explain the cost factors that drive the overall severity of damage events and so forth would be a really interesting way to augment your sales process or relationship with clients, right? Kind of, coaching them through, giving them a really clear view of, hey, if we have 10 units affected at one of your hotels, we have this kind of scenario. Let me teach you kind of the moving parts and show you what that scenario is going to look like before it happens. I thought, wow, that's potentially a cool sales tool. Have you seen any like kind of progressive companies starting to experiment with using it in their sales process or account management?
Not yet, but it is, and that's part of our business development course, is plugging the edge in, not only for estimating, but because once you understand how powerful it is and how much leverage it gives you, and you walk into any size company and say, okay, what if there was this scenario? What would it cost? Boom, boom, boom. Let's run you through this. Here's what your estimated cost would be under this scenario and under these guidelines. And it's a tremendous leverage tool, especially if you're doing ERPs or DRPs, to sit down now with the client that you just signed up on an emergency or disaster recovery plan. And now you can walk them through and show them what a scenario may cost them. That is tremendously valuable. Number one, it may show them that they're underinsured. Number two, it may solidify them and say, you know what, we got the right company, because not only are they saying what they're already telling us what that scenario would possibly cost. And so it's tremendously powerful tool for sales ops, and then even in the project management world, knowing your production rate when you're a project manager is very important, so that are you producing what you should be producing.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, we were just talking about this earlier with some training content, is that pause that happens in these organizational charts or these chains of commands in the commercial environment. Like our on-site leadership, we need to be aware, right, that they have limited decision capacity for a lot of really good, financial and business-based reasons. And so the more that we can do and the faster we can provide the kind of information to speed up their decision-making process, the quicker, right, we can move forward with the project. But if we don't do a good job of creating and providing that level of information, there's no way for them to be proactive and be able to keep that project moving as well. And I think a lot of people may not fully grasp how much better this tool actually makes that particular process. It's that, I think some companies refer to it as the rough order of magnitude, or something along those lines. It's just give these folks tools to make decisions that will therefore make you able to produce the work and move forward with the job. And this would play a really critical role in that as well.
Oh, and we're just scratching the surface with it, and that's the exciting thing about it. And I have to be very patient because I'm like, for me, if you don't have this weapon in your toolbox, then you're really missing something. And it's one of those things that when we first put it together, it's like, and we started testing it. It's like it was so accurate, And one of the first things some of the people would say was, where has this been? Why is this the first time? And so very excited about it. And whenever we test it against any of it's always there. And so very excited about where it's going.
That's awesome.
That's
man.
cool.
That's awesome.
Well, hey, Tom, as we wrap up, I think we've probably created a fair bit of interest in some of the different work you do. So could you just share real quickly for people that are just kind of getting turned on to you and Large Loss Mastery and the Edge Plus, like, are there events that people can get in on still this year that if they're not totally full? What are those? When are they coming up?
We always, the number one thing is I always have enough room. And so no matter where we're at, we always have enough room for more. And so you can go to largelossmastery.com and check out our schedule. Just go to register and you'll see what's our courses that are coming up. We do have a few more that will be popping up in the fall, but you'll see our full schedule. And then you can also check out the Edge Plus, which is also there at largelossmastery.com. Just click on Get the Edge, and you can select either the basic edition or the Plus edition. I really suggest the Plus edition because it's the basic edition is just the calculator. You won't be able to do any scope work or anything like that, contracting. And so, and eventually we'll probably stop offering the basic anyway and just offer the Plus. And so largelossmastery.com. And there is a phone number that's on the top of the page. All they got to do, that goes right to me. Any questions or anything, come right to me. And so I'd be more than happy to see everybody at a course, or if they have any questions at all, just you can also shoot me an email at tom@largelossmastery.com.
Awesome.
Right on.
Well, thanks again, my friend. We appreciate you hanging out with us. It was exciting to see you and talk with you some more. And we do encourage folks to learn more about what you're doing, what you're training. It's a game changer, I think, for those that are making that transition into the commercial space. So thanks again, my friend.
Yeah, dude, we admire what you're doing in the industry, man.
Big time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the time.
All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of Head, Heart, and Boots.
And if you're enjoying the show, or you love this episode, please hit subscribe, write us a review, or share this episode with a friend. Share it on LinkedIn, share it via text, whatever. It all helps. Thanks for listening.